Before playing Split Fiction, the only other game I tried from Hazelight was It Takes Two. I thought that game had a somewhat compelling narrative and fun gameplay mechanics, but only won Game of the Year because 2021 was just pretty dull overall. After playing Split Fiction, I can humbly say that I was wrong, and Hazelight are absolute masterminds when it comes to co-op gaming. I simply have never seen any other studio come up with these kinds of creative and fun ideas that work so harmoniously for this style of game. It oozes creativity, and you can just tell Hazelight had an absolute blast working on this. I genuinely think that Split Fiction at the very least should be a contender for Game of the Year. Let's talk about it. Just a couple of housewarming things. If you're sensitive to spoilers, don't worry. All I'm showing you on the screen is the first major level, but if even that is too much for you, I highly recommend, as with any other review out there, is you just listen instead of watch. I'll still get the main point across, and you'll still get a good review hopefully out of it. The story of Split Fiction involves two amateur writers, Mio and Zoe. Both are looking for a chance to finally be published, but can't catch a break. That is until Raider Publishing approaches them with a very too good to be true kind of offer. He calls them and a couple of other amateur writers to participate in an experiment that will allow them to experience their stories in a virtual 3D world. That sounds really cool, right? Well, you know that thing I said earlier about all too good to be true? That's because this machine they're plugging into is actually stealing their ideas, so that Raider Publishing can use them in their new product they're releasing. Before plugging in, Mio gets scared at the last second and bails. Except things go sideways and she ends up in the same quote-unquote plug-in as Zoe. Luckily for them, and every other amateur writer there, this is their best chance at saving their ideas. So Zoe and Mio set off to do just that. Now if this plot sounds very basic, that's because it is. Except the game would fool you into thinking that's all the plot was. For me, and probably many others, the real meat and potatoes of this story come down to Mio and Zoe themselves.
What's with all the debts and payments in this story?
What do you mean?
I'm just curious as to what the story's about.
I told you it's a revenge story.
That part I got, trust me. But what's it really about?
Nothing.
Oh, come on. You always put a bit of yourself into what you create.
I don't think that's true.
You see, Mio is a very pessimistic and angry at the world kind of person, while Zoe is the exact opposite. She tends to be happy and outgoing and looks for the best in things. As you progress through the game, you start to realize that both of them are dealing with immense amount of hardship and trauma, with their personal experiences being the main driving force for why each of them write stories the way they do. Mio tends to write very edgy and dark sci-fi worlds, while Zoe focuses more on colorful, adventurous fantasy worlds. By the time you reach the climax of the game, their stories are fully revealed, and I honestly believe that depending on who you are and what you personally have gone through in your life, their stories will hit a lot closer to home. Regardless though, it is serviceable, and I think it is worth investing in. The main enjoyment of this game, however, will come from the levels themselves. The gameplay loop in Split Fiction revolves around you and your co-op partner traversing one big story from either Mio's catalog of sci-fi or Zoe's catalog of fantasy. Each player is given a certain ability at the start of every level, and to get through, both of you need to come up with creative ways to combine them and get past the puzzles. I know that probably doesn't do the levels of this game justice, but to put it simply, if you think what you're seeing on screen right now is insane, that is not even close to how fun and creative the levels of this game really get. I constantly found myself saying, this is incredible, I don't know how they will top this, and then the next level would come and I'd be blown away. The bosses in this game actually provide somewhat of a challenge and have incredibly unique ways of forcing the player to synergize their abilities. The final boss specifically was one of the trippiest and simultaneously funnest bosses I've ever had the pleasure of fighting. I don't think there was a single bad boss in this game, off the top of my head. Within each level, there are also 2 to 3 mini levels sprinkled in that transport you to a very quick but fun story created by the other person. This allows for the players to have a quick break from the monotony of the powers you're given in the main level, but also manage to have very fun, wacky, and creative ideas themselves. The best way to describe them would be the devs just throwing a bunch of fun ideas at a whiteboard and started making them. These levels are optional and missable, but for the most part, your characters will tell you when there's a side story in the area, so it's hard to miss. I really have to appreciate what Hazelight did here, as because these are optional, there's always the potential for a majority of players to skip past these, and yet they put so much care and love into every single one. I highly recommend you do these as you're playing. It would be a disservice to you and your partner to skip them. In each of the main levels and side levels, there are also references to other games. Some of them are subtle and others are very on the nose. From the top of my head, I can think of a reference to a Donkey Kong game and a reference to games like Diablo and Path of Exile. I think veteran gamers will have an absolute blast going through this and finding all the references. As for the negatives of this game, if I'm being honest, there's practically none. The only complaint I have is that the main villain is horribly cliche and has some very cringe villain dialogue. But like I said earlier, I think he is meant to be more of a catalyst for why the story happens, as you don't even get to really see him much. But the biggest negative I have is that not everyone has a buddy to play with, and sadly won't get to experience this masterpiece. I know Hazelight created a Discord to find other players, but if I'm being honest, playing with the right person can enhance the experience of this game tenfold. So grab your sibling, grab your significant other, or your parent, or even your grandparents that you love so dearly. This is a game that you need to try, and my rating for it is a 10 out of 10. It knows what kind of game it is, and does it to perfection. I will definitely be looking at Hazelight Studio announcements with a keen eye now. Thank you for watching. Hey, so this is my first ever game review I've ever done. It's honestly hard to do because I'm very bad at talking for a long period of time and I'm not good at making scripts, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and it would be very much appreciated. If you have any tips for me, leave them in the comments below because I'm very new to this. And as for my channel and what to expect here, I'm just a guy that loves playing games. I mean, I do Let's Plays, but I also want to try and do reviews as well because I thought, sometimes I have something to say about video games I play, right? But if that's something you're interested in, just consider subscribing. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I hope I convinced you to try this game. Otherwise, yeah, I will talk to you guys later. See ya.